Hey guys, this is Solution Podfic, and today we're going to be reading The One Where they just almost didn't figure it out by Bats and the Birds. This is Chapter 6. Clark really didn't want to send both Batman and Nightwing on this mission. He was almost entirely convinced that forcing them to work together would end in bloodshed eventually, and more than just the split lip that Nightwing got when the two of them first fought. Unfortunately, Batman had the information and experience with dealing with fear toxin, and Nightwing had proven himself useful enough that not taking him seemed stupid. Also, everyone else with comparable technical know-how was busy. So far, nothing had gone wrong. Batman, Nightwing, Black Canary, and Green Arrow had been sent to break into and sneak around in the abandoned army base, while Clark, Green Lantern, and both Flashes waited on comms. The basic idea was to disable their tech, flush them out, then arrest them. That was, if everything went according to plan. Of course, nothing went according to plan. The comms had been silent as the stealth team infiltrated the base. Then an alarm started blaring, and there was just enough time for Clark to hear Nightwing say, "Well, that's not good," before everything went to hell. The door to the facility they were watching literally exploded outward, sending Nightwing and Black Canary tumbling out soon after. Canary just barely landed on her feet and whirled around using her canary cry to deflect some sort of projectile that got fired out after them. Suddenly, Batman's voice crackled to life on the comms. "Opponents have alien tech. Stealth mission abandoned. Engage in combat. Canary and Nightwing report." "Little busy for a report right now, Batman." Canary yelled at things that, at first glance, looked smooth, white. Alien droids clawed their way out of the building. "We're fine, B," Nightwing shouted, leaping out of the way of a projectile that promptly burst into flames upon hitting the ground. "We could use you out here, though." He threw one of his grimace sticks and it bounced off 3 of the metal suits, then back to his hand before barely leaving a dent. "Well, that's not great." That seemed like the cue for Clark and the rest of the League members on standby to join the fight. Whatever fight they had been anticipating, it wasn't this. Whatever alien tech their foes had gotten their hands on seemed everything resistant. Clark had some luck tearing apart droids and mech suits with brute strength, but his heat vision and freeze breath just bounced right off of them. Their luck was only holding out in the sense that they didn't seem able to deploy their fear toxin yet. Clark ripped through a droid, then shot himself into the air to visually check in on the rest of the team. The enemies broke through Green Lantern's constructs like they were nothing. Canary had some success knocking the enemies off course with her cry. The Flashes were running damage control, deflecting projectiles and doing their best to confuse the enemies by zipping around. And Green Arrow was mostly just dodging at the moment, hitting where they could and looking for weak points to shoot. It took another second for him to locate Batman and Nightwing. The two heroes were swarmed by bots, but they were holding their own, literally fighting back to back. They held the enemies back well enough, but they couldn't make a dent in the numbers. Clark dove down, managing to rip off the cannon arm of a bit that was swinging towards Nightwing. "Thanks, Soups!" Nightwing yelled, flipping out of the way of a projectile. The moment he landed, he whirled around and whistled. Before Clark could process what was happening, Batman ducked down and Nightwing vaulted off his shoulder, twisting in midair and grabbing an alien droid and slamming it into the ground. Nightwing's attacks managed to crack the outer shell, and the moment it hit the ground, Batman had already thrown a batarang and lodged itself in the crack, then exploded. Maybe Clark shouldn't have worried as much about them working together. He was worrying a bit more now about why they worked so well together. He realized, thinking about it, that they had similar fighting styles, similar gadgets, and even similar tactics. It was just hard to think of anyone, especially anyone who was as personable as Nightwing, as being like Batman. Especially considering that Nightwing had Batman's current skill in combat at least a decade younger. It occurred to him that he didn't actually know how old Nightwing was, but probably around Wally's age, if not younger. He should be among the younger generation, promising, yes, but inexperienced compared to the senior League members. Unless he'd been training since he was an actual child, there was no reason that Nightwing should fight the way he did. In Clark's momentary distraction, another droid swung at him with a mean-looking metal fist. That probably would have actually managed to do some damage to the Kryptonian, but before it could make contact, Nightwing shot a grapple line that wrapped around the droid's arm and tugged it off course for a split second. The line snapped, causing Nightwing to curse under his breath, but it was enough time for Clark to catch the fist and snap the arm off at the joint. Nightwing backed up until he was back-to-back with Batman again. Then, in a moment so fluid that Clark probably wouldn't have noticed save for his enhanced senses, grabbed one of Batman's grapples off his utility belt, then shot at the same droid that had just attacked Clark. Then used that leverage to pull himself and the droid closer together and ram one of his grimace sticks through the droid's armored skull and into its computerized brain. Clark vaguely thought that Nightwing was going to get an earful about taking gadgets later, but his brain was still trying to catch up with the fact that Nightwing seemed to know exactly where the gadget he was looking for was, and exactly how to use the tech that wasn't his. He briefly remembered Barry babbling about something about Nightwing stealing Batman's gear, but he hadn't believed him at the time. Something in the back of Clark's mind also thought that Batman had a safeguard on his suit that stopped anyone that wasn't him from taking gadgets off his belt, removing pieces of armor, removing his cowl. But maybe he had built in exceptions for League members, considering the reason that Clark knew about it was because Green Arrow had been zapped trying to treat an injury while Batman was unconscious. They continued like that, making any dents in their enemies that they could, until Canary suddenly yelled through the comms. The drone just took down his beeping the bad way things beep before they go boom. I don't know what... And then her voice cut off abruptly as Clark's world turned upside down and he was flung through the air by a shockwave of pure heat and force. Clark recovered quickly. When he opened his eyes, he found a wasteland of broken and scattered alien droid pieces. His instincts kicked in, and he immediately started searching for his less than invulnerable teammates. Hal had been in the air when the blast went off, and there he remained, enveloped by his green light as a shield. It looked like the two Flashes grabbed Dinah and Oliver, speeding them away from the blast, but had still been knocked off their feet. The four of them lay in a crumpled heap on the ground, but Clark could hear heartbeats, and they began to pull themselves up as he watched. That left Batman and Nightwing. Batman remained where he stood, luckily close to the edge of the blast. He was hunched over with his back exposed where the explosion came from, enveloped by the cape that Clark knew was just about everything proof. But no Nightwing. Clark didn't know his heartbeat that well, but he could still pick it out. It was beating, but Clark couldn't see him. Even as he flew over and used his X-ray vision to search through the rubble, expecting to find Nightwing under a pile of robots, he wasn't there. Then Batman stood to his full height. His cape fell back, revealing the wide-eyed young hero it had been wrapped around. Nightwing stumbled backwards, looking dazed, but no words everywhere. He looked around, and after determining that they were no longer in the heat of battle, he began laughing, managing to sound only slightly unsettled. Well, good to know that the if things go boom, hide behind my cape instinct is still firmly hardwired into my skill. Nightwing chuckled, scratching at the base of his neck. It's not a bad instinct to have, Batman grunted, looking Nightwing up and down as though to check for injuries. Keeps you alive. Nightwing's mouth quirked up into a crooked smile, and he pressed a finger to the comm device in his ear. Hey Flashes, Arrow, Canary, you guys good? Just wonderful. The younger Flash groaned from the other side of the battlefield as he pulled himself to his feet. I feel like I just ran into Canary's cry again, the older Flash continued. But nothing broken, just very bruised. Black Canary and Green Arrow both agreed, and the Flashes grabbed each other and sped them over to where Nightwing, Batman, and Superman already were, while Green Lantern landed next to Nightwing, completing the group. What the hell happened? Lantern cried, kicking a broken droid leg in disbelief. There's no way they wanted their whole robot army to just go kaboom. Maybe they saw the robots weren't making easy work for us and thought they might take us out, Canary suggested. Or it's the pitfalls of using alien tech. You don't know exactly what it does, and sometimes it explodes on you, Nightwing said. Either way, we're not done. We still gotta take down whoever's behind all this, and figure out what they're doing with the fear toxin. The fact that it hasn't been used on us already worries me, but it could also mean that whatever they were building isn't ready yet. We have to take it out before they can finish. As their team regrouped, picking through the alien rubble for any clues and trying to come up with the best plan of attack, Dick caught Bruce checking him over a few times from under the cowl. When it was clear the rest of the team was occupied, Dick finally spoke up. I am okay, you know, he said lightly. Lucky for you, I apparently still know that you'll keep me safe if things go sideways. I know I don't always listen to that instinct, but it worked out this time. Look, I even still have all my fingers. He held up both of his hands and wiggled his fingers around to prove his point. Bruce grunted in response. Dick rolled his eyes. You're impossible. Talk to me. I don't like going into this without an antidote for this strand of toxin. Bruce grumbled. It's not safe. We can't wait any longer. And hey, we gave the research Flash started over to Red Robin Oracle. I know you trust them to get it right. The moment they finish the antidote, we'll know. Alright guys, now that's the end of chapter 6 of the one where the Justice League almost didn't figure it out by Bats and the Birds. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.